Welcome back, everybody. Another episode of Talk Openly, Lions Roar Dharma Center's podcast. I'm Jack, and I'm here with my wonderful, excellent, lovely friend Daniel. Daniel,
Hello.
so glad to see you.
Hello, my dear friend. How are you?
I'm good. I look forward to Tuesdays now, which Tuesday used to be my least favorite day of the work week. Because, Monday is kind of stereotypically bad, but you're kind of it's just you're getting things started. Whereas for me, it's like Tuesday is like, I don't know, it's not Wednesday. Wednesday's the hump day, so you're kind of like whatever rolling into the
Right.
like this middle ground that's just not cool. It's like you're kind of like approaching the peak, but you're in like the really hard part. I don't know.
Yeah.
But this makes Tuesday something to look forward to for me.
It's Tuesday Talk Day.
Tuesday Talk Day, that's right.
You know what I like about it is that like no matter how I'm feeling, like for example, I think both of us are probably pretty tired right now, I think, and long day, whatnot. Is that no matter how I'm feeling, even if I'm cranky pants, even if I'm depressed, no matter what it is, it's like a little buoy, like it's a little like talk openly bounce.
Yeah,
Sometimes it's not
yeah,
so little.
for sure.
I would say that the last two episodes and this one as well, this focus that we have on the four opponent powers, has been really bounce worthy. And the bounce is more than just per show. There's like a collective sort of series bounce as well.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a really interesting practice, and
Mhm.
I imagine that you've been keeping it going, like doing it every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have too, and it's just been kind of interesting to see, like, wow, I really do have a couple things that are real strong habits. Um, Even when they're things that now I'm checking in with every day, like, okay, that's something that I'm working on, bring some more awareness to it. Which I do, right? Like that's
Yeah.
part, I think, of this practice that's really powerful is that just very simply, I'm bringing more awareness to my everyday actions. Um, and even then, it's
Mm.
like irritability will arise. Um, and I know that irritability, even you're at the level of Dalai Lama, like he feels anger, but he knows not to react. He brings wise mind into the picture. Um, and so I know that I'm never going to not like completely eradicate my emotions. It's not the point, but that okay, maybe I can actually get that thing that people talk about like getting some space between the stimulus and the
And the
reaction.
response, yeah, exactly.
Right.
Right, right. Just a little spaciousness. You don't need much. The gap, even just like a few milliseconds sometimes could even be life-saving. So,
Totally.
yeah, yeah. I agree. I think spaciousness around the stimulus and response cycle is critical,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If we're going to transform and change. If we want to keep
Right.
things going, I think we should not be doing it. Like if we're happy with the way things are and the way things have been going and we're content, then I think, I'd leave good enough alone. But
Yeah.
I'm not. And the
Right.
more the more that I observe my mind and my speech and my actions and look really contemplate it, the more I see that
Hmm.
I need to continue to work on these four opponent powers.
Yeah. Same here. Well, tonight we're going to be talking about a third power, and it's going to be the power of remedial action. And so we'll get into it in the second half of the show and talk about some of the different um, traditional practices that you can do as kind of yeah, to counterbalance some of uh, the less skillful things that we do.
Yeah,
I'll say.
yeah, exactly. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, how you doing today? How's your week? How's your practice? What's going on?
Yeah, things are pretty groovy. I don't have any big ta-das, no huge announcements or revelations or realizations that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
But things are good. My practice is going well. My training's going well. Continuing to do, good long sits. And remember, I don't know if you remember or not, but I committed myself to having a much better understanding and appreciation of the Lam Rim by the
Hmm.
end of this year. Right. So, and we're just getting started, but it's really nice. I'm reading Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand by Pabanka Rinpoche.
I've
And
heard of this. Yeah.
uh it's if you get a chance, it's delightful. I'm like he's so detail oriented
Hmm.
that sometimes it's a little bit I'm not going to say it's off-putting because it's not that. It's fascinating, but it is daunting at times, right? And
Daunting.
the thing that I have to realize is, in many cases he's speaking from a monastic perspective,
Yeah.
and he's speaking about a very rich tradition, right? And his own experience and what he learned from his teacher, and he's passing it along. So he's packing it full. It does not mean I have to do all that exactly as he lays it out and have to do it all right now every single day.
Hmm.
So, but it has informed my practice, right? The way in which like I prepare to meditate has changed,
Hmm.
it's really hard for me now since I started reading this book. I don't think there's been one single time that I just sat down on my cushion and started meditating, which
Yeah.
was which was actually, for the most part what I would do, for most of my Buddhist life was to
Hmm.
I would, sit down on the cushion, I would take refuge and then I would just jump right into meditation. I might do some
Yeah.
preliminary physical exercises or something, but now I do a lot more kind of prep work before meditation, and I think it yields some pretty amazing results. So I'm really
Yeah.
pleased with learning from him. He's an amazing teacher.
Can I ask what some of that prep work looks like?
Yeah, definitely the seven limb aspect of it with the prostrations and doing the regret aspect, offering, right? And I think that like that part of it has been really uh, yeah, it's been helpful in terms of getting myself sort of aligned properly with visualization, right? Visualizing the merit field and like really kind of like settling down, understanding like, okay, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? Where like what ex like it's like setting intention, but also creating sort of like what I think it is? It's a little bit like creating like a little container for my
Mm-hmm.
practice, but before, after, right? These sort of bookmarks. And yeah, super awesome.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
it sounds like it's really rooting you in the tradition.
that's right.
Um,
Thank you for putting it that way. I had not thought about it that way, but that's exactly it. You're
yeah.
right. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. What about you?
Um,
How's life?
Life is okay. Um, yeah, life itself is lifing as it does. In that way, I mean, it's, kind of stressful off and on.
Yeah.
It has its variations and flavors of stress. Um, but nothing that feels too overwhelming. And honestly, sometimes like I don't know, stress or strong emotions in some ways help me feel like more alive. Like it's something that I can
Oh,
like bounce off of, like it's
yeah.
something I can work with.
Yeah.
And so there's times where I'm like, I almost welcome like a strong sense of sadness or like, challenge, because then that's something that I really I actually kind of enjoy taking it to the cushion.
Yeah.
Um and and just sitting at my altar and yeah, reflecting. And I find too like not that's kind of like the reverie stage, but even like my shamatha is a little bit different when I'm having some kind of like strong experience. Um, so that's kind of interesting just to track.
Hmm.
Um, and then as far as my meditation, I really appreciated, I think it was last week or the week before, um, you mentioned some meditation instruction that Lama Gempa gave at a Sunday meditation about the breath and how you were like trying to figure out how do I exhale? Like what is this?
Right.
And his suggestion was to think of, how on like the a crashing of a wave, there's the water doesn't just recede, there's also like a sinking of some of the water into the sand. And that just like really stuck with me. And so the next morning, yeah, the next morning I did that. I just focused on my breath for my shamatha meditation. And I just visualized this kind of like sinking of the breath. And you know how like sand, um, when you like wet sand, when you step into it, there's this kind of like almost like buoyant quality where it kind of like lifts up and then sinks
Yeah.
down
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
So that's almost like what my belly felt like, was this kind of like
Mm.
uh, um plasticity almost to it, where it kind of like just fluctuated on its own, and then the air itself, the breath just filled back in, right? And so it was like there I wasn't able to do it the whole time that I was able to just kind of release control, but there was a good number of breaths where I was really like, wow, this feels like natural breath,
Yeah.
and it's just so beautiful and peaceful, really grounding.
It's
And so
delicious.
it's delicious. And you know what's funny, and it could just be my body has fluctuations, but I haven't had that kind of like breathing issue in the last week where I'm like, like trying to get like
Yeah.
a deep breath.
Oh, good.
So
Yeah,
yeah, I
that's
think
I'm
that's
so
part of it.
glad. That's my experience as well. Exactly what you
Mm,
described. This especially that aspect of noticing how like the physical anxiety and the shortness of breath that sometimes can prevail in sort of everyday life, especially when we're reading the news. That
yep.
how then remembering, coming back to the breath, good to come back to the breath, but coming back to the breath with a little bit of that, visualization and recognizing that the breath needs to go out. So I was visiting with our dear friend Sue Forster yesterday.
Mm,
Had tea with her. It was beautiful. And I was telling her about this experience, what Lama had said, and she said, yes, that's all really good. And also another thing that can be helpful if you find that. So here's one thing I've noticed, and this is where Sue's advice comes in handy. So sometimes the waves are not crashing on a sandy beach, you see. So sometimes they're crashing against like a cliff or something. And
mm,
and you'll know, at least in my experience, what I notice is I'm like, okay, it is a full cycle. I can see it's a full cycle, but it's not having that feeling at the end of that sinking of the breath, right? And this is where her advice came in, which is sometimes just a good like where you sort of twist sort of the lower part of your abdomen and the out breath and push out the last remaining bit, right? Doing that can be super helpful. And I had already been doing that a little bit, so I could verify. I was like, yeah, absolutely that. And then, as some people often, you may have heard this already, but um, making sure that the out breath is longer than the in breath, right? So
yeah,
if
right,
you're doing counting, you might count four on the in breath and six on the out breath, something like that. But
right.
really sort of allow, like, still, even if it's not sinking into the sand peacefully at the end, still making sure that all of the air that has gone in comes out. I find it helpful because I don't have to do it all the time. Like that controlled breathing like that, you don't have to do it very much. It just, at least in my experience, maybe like, three or six of them, something like that, and then it naturally, the natural breath comes in.
Yeah. It's so cool. Yeah, I like that. Um, yeah, maybe I'll try that for when I have some rocky
Yeah,
rocky bed. I'm gonna
yeah,
let my cat out of the room real quick.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
Get
He
out of
woke
here,
up.
James.
He's
For the
sleepy.
listeners, I got rid of Lola Boo. I kicked her out of the room before the show started because I just knew that as soon as we got going into some good topic, she'd be
Yeah.
yelling, meowing at me to get out.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? He was sleeping so peacefully. I thought I might be able to get away with shutting the
Nah,
door
nah,
completely,
no.
but no, he's a cat.
Yeah.
Oh man. But yeah, that's been kind of my week in practice. And yeah, I just finished a text on the LOM and it was Tsongkapa's middle length
Okay.
LOM
Yeah.
commentary on the LOM. And I too, yeah, noticed there were areas in that text that I felt a little overwhelmed,
Yeah.
where it's like you said, like, do I need to do all of this? Like, um, but yeah, I've found a deeper kind of connection, I think, with the tradition.
Rooted in the
Um,
tradition, as you said.
right.
I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and um, I think that's really important and actually essential for our training with our teacher because he is a direct lineage keeper, right? Um, and so to really know and kind of immerse myself in the tradition that he's keeping, right? And like asking us to carry forth, I think is really essential. Um, and I asked something about, I know we've talked about this before on the show, but like that connection with the lineage feels really uh like kind of gripping,
Mm,
right? Like,
hmm.
wow, I can't believe that I'm part of this living lineage, it's not
Yeah.
just um these ancient kind of texts that have, no connection to me. There's
No.
really it's been passed down and here's my teacher teaching it to me. It's so precious. Um so yeah, powerful stuff.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Well, what do you think? Should we read some of that lineage dharma? Get some lojong going?
Some Lojong mind training using the RLSG, the Random Lojong Slogan Generator at the LionsRoadDharmaCenter.org
Gonna
website.
get hydrated while you pull it up.
Yeah, it's a good idea. It's always good, especially with all
You
the
got some
bug.
hydration going over there?
Oh my God, I got so much hydration going on. You wouldn't even believe. I got a cup of water and I have some holy basil tea, also I think is known as Tulsi tea. I love it.
That's good stuff.
Mm, so good. So good.
Yeah, love it. I'm
All
gonna
right.
drink more tea.
I can't get enough tea. I love tea.
Yeah.
Oh
Oh,
my goodness. All right.
okay.
All right. Well,
Something's telling us, okay,
is
we
this like
gotta
the third or fourth or fifth or sixth time? How many times have we gotten this, Rose?
a good handful. Yeah.
All right. All right.
So this is important for us, I guess.
Yep.
So slogan 34, don't shift a Zo's burden to an ox. So Charlie Kebgon says Tibetans value their Zo, which is a female yak, far more than their oxen. So even though a Zo is stronger than an ox, a Tibetan would typically think if the ox dies, I can easily replace it. But a new Zo would cost me dearly. So I'll make the ox carry this load, even though it isn't really strong enough. We often employ the same logic in our relationships with others.
Mm, we should
You know
use
what
the
just
right
kind of
tool for the task.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, and another kind of maybe like flavor of this that just kind of popped up to me too is like um because he says, using the same logic in our relationships with others, I was thinking, okay, what's the relationship here? Is that like I'm valuing one more than the other? Yeah, yeah. So I'm valuing me and like what this creature or person or whatever does for me. Um, and I'm not in a mindset of equanimity.
Right.
Um, I don't see them as equal, and therefore one is more expendable than the other. So that's interesting. I don't think I remember. thinking that last time.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
maybe that's why it keeps coming up, right?
maybe.
Is especially that last little comment about just that, about how we use that kind of logic in our relationships with others. It is true, right? We sort of devalue others in the sense that we oftentimes see people as means to an end or tools, right?
Yeah,
And don't mind so much using and abusing others to get our goals met. But if we are, even if we're the ones capable, more capable of doing it, right? We have more capacity and
right.
understand more about what we're trying to accomplish. We might still value, we're like, but my time is precious, my energy. Oh, and these people, they're not doing anything anyway, right?
That's definitely, I mean, there's um, that's very strong in our culture, isn't it?
It's true.
You know,
Yeah, I think I can speak from it. I can say that within the Dharma Center, I feel that way. I
yeah.
most definitely feel like I shift the burden to others in a sort of, I wouldn't say a devaluing way, but in a not as appreciative way as I would wish, in the sense that, it's a little Dharma center, but there's a lot going on there, and it needs so much energy. It needs so much work, right? There's so much effort that goes into everything from administration to cleaning the bathrooms and keeping the yard space good, providing some kind of security deal. There's all kinds of stuff, right?
Hmm.
And it's easy for me to sort of be like, well, I could. So I'll give you a tiny little example.
Sure.
Sometimes, there we'll do like every other Sunday we have this potluck lunch, right? And when I first started going to those, I'd always hang around and wash the dishes and dry and put them away, and I'd be one of the last ones to leave. And
Mm.
I felt really good about that. It was a nice thing, right? Like it felt like it was an important part of the practice. But now I'll get the sense, I'll start to sense like, oh, things are kind of like wrapping up, and then I'll be like, well, I have like my kids, this what there's this other thing I should be doing, and I could skip out right now. I could do that. There's all these
Yeah,
other, and you know what? There are new people here, and they deserve the opportunity to
they
enjoy.
deserve the opportunity.
You see how that I'm not joking, right?
I totally get it.
Right.
That mind that we have, it'll justify just about anything, huh?
Right. When it turns out I am not a Zoe, I'm an oxen, right? Like I'm
Uh-huh.
not that valuable. And I could
That's so
totally
funny.
wash some dishes.
Yeah, totally.
And I would
Well,
still benefit from doing so.
for sure. And it is important to kind of assess, okay, where am I at today? Like maybe I am like I need to back off a little bit or take some of this burden off. But yeah, how funny, right? With like there's that honeymoon phase
Yeah,
of like when you first come to the temple and it's like, oh, I just want to do everything. I am now in service to this place.
that's right.
And then yeah, then it's like any relationship, it's kind of like, okay, and now it's the real stuff, right?
Hmm.
Am I going to continue to show up and be here for it? But,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
So what's this statue here? This is pretty cool.
Barahi.
Rahi.
Barahi, which I
Interesting.
think, if I remember from last time, I think is a manifestation of Vajrayogini.
That's right. Okay. Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah, I think so. That's
Yeah.
the
Pretty
Sal,
badass.
right?
Yeah. I like
Yeah,
it.
me too. It is badass. That's cool.
All
All
right.
right.
We're moving along here.
Yeah, boy. Lickety split.
Yeah. So sorry, my computer's doing some weird things. I'm here. I'm here.
Hmm.
Um, okay, so last time in this kind of four-part series we've been doing on the four opponent powers, we talked about the power of reliance. So the first one was regret, like thinking about different actions that we engage in that we're like, okay, that wasn't skillful. I don't want to do that again for such and such reasons. And then the next step is relying on sources of goodness and inspiration that can help us along the path. That's both holy beings as well as other fellow sentient beings who we rely on for our own liberation, because we're not going to get liberated uh, if others aren't. Um, and so then the next step is actually taking some kind of remedial action to oppose, like it says, for opponent powers. So the remedial action is kind of opposing the unskillful or negative action that we're wanting to purify. And so the way that I kind of see it is as though, like, karma is this kind of like trajectory, like all these different offshoots, like kind of how you imagine like a satellite going out in space. And if you just set like the math off to like a 0.000000 whatever degree, eventually, like, it's going to get you way far off track than what you might have
Oh,
been going
Jack,
otherwise, right?
I love that. That's great. Thank
And so
you.
what I think about with the purification, the remedy, the remedial action, is that it's kind of like a course correction. It's just this little tiny
Yeah.
um, bump in the direction that you want to be going back um, to to correct for where you've gotten a little off course.
That is a
Um,
brilliant way of describing it. I love it. It's way easier for me to understand what you just said than the sort of normal longer that the karma, sits around, the heavier it gets, right? Like
mm,
if you purify it quickly, it doesn't have there's not as much of a problem, right? But if you wait a long time, as you said, then you're way off course. The actual effect is way heavier, is way worse. But I like the way you describe it. It's nice.
yeah, cool. Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad. It's a helpful image for me too. Yeah, so remedial action. Um, what do you think of when you think of kind of remedy or remedial action?
Well, within this context, I think a couple of different things. One, there was what was her name? Venerable Robina, right? That
Yeah,
we talked about before. You had pointed out an article by Venerable Robina on the four opponent powers, and what I really liked, she said something. She said, "There's a whole medicine cabinet of medicines in Tibetan Buddhism." And there's simply practices you could do. So in general, the antidote is to do something that the opposite. It's not a very good quote, but I like the idea of this medicine cabinet of medicines, right? And it's
yeah.
really simple. It's the opposite of whatever you did.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
like the example I think that she gave was if you kill an animal, right? Let's say you kill an insect and then you recognize, oh hey, I just killed and that's not an action that I want to do. Well, then you can take the opposite, which would be to like save an animal, right?
Protect life.
And
Mm-hmm.
protect life. Exactly, exactly. And there's, and this is this opponent part. This, just flip the opposite. What's the opposite of whatever it is that you're doing? I
Mm-hmm.
find that part of it really helpful, but within my own experience in practice, I think Vajrasattva practice is key. And I thought it's kind of funny. I mentioned, I think it was last time that I actually, or maybe it was the first time, I never really heard the term four opponent powers, or if I heard it, it never stuck, right? But I've done
Mm.
a ton of Vajrasattva practice,
Yeah, right,
which is practicing the four opponent powers. That's what that is, right?
right.
So it's essentially one and the same. And so to me, Vajrasattva practice is like is a very special way of remedying the fault. And I find actually I'd kind of like to talk about besides sort of traditional ways of remedy, I really like more mundane things as well, right?
Sure.
Because there's all kinds of positive action that we can take, right? We recognize negative action, negative, we something negative, so we're going to apply something positive, right, to counteract that force.
Mm-hmm.
And there's all kinds, there's like I would say it's like limitless, right? What can be done. And I think that can I tell a little story about an experience I just
Please.
had? Okay. So okay, to back up a little bit, I had Darshan with Lama on Wednesday rather, and
Mm,
I've been begging him to give me a topic for a talk that's coming up in less than a month. And
hmm.
he has been diligently making me beg for it. Um, and so then I had Darshan with him, and he said, "Yeah, I've been thinking about a topic for you. But before I tell you what I think, why don't you tell me what you think? What have you given any thought to a topic that you'd like to discuss?"
Uh-huh.
And I said, "Well, there's one in particular, which is the four opponent powers, because Jack and I have been talking about it, and I've been loving that discussion." And
Yeah.
he just lit up and he was like, "That's it. That's the one."
Oh, oh. That makes
And
me so happy.
yeah, yeah, you inspired a whole bunch of stuff here, you know. So I was really, really pleased with that. So then he starts talking. He was excited, you know. He starts talking about it. And he starts talking to me about disappointment. And I
Mm,
was like, I was a little confused, right? I was just like, why is he talking to me about disappointment? And then he tells me all about how, Shakyamuni Buddha, like he describes his whole trajectory of how his life had, disappointment, before, during, and after his enlightenment. And
wow.
yeah, yeah. And so I take this home and I'm like, what does that have to do with the four opponent powers, right?
Uh,
And so then I started to put some pieces together, and it's because, I think that that disappointment it's the precursor to regret, right? And so like like things I'm not happy,
mm,
like things aren't the way that I want them to be. And then
yeah,
there's this sort of like, what's my role in all of this? Like
yeah,
what
yeah,
can I do, right? Like, okay, I don't like it. What is there something I could do about it, right? Okay, so
yeah.
so I didn't realize that I sort of inadvertently stepped into this a few maybe like 3 weeks ago, something like that, where I live, unfortunately, it's a pretty busy place. There's a lot of cars coming and going. And so there's a decent amount of trash in the streets, right?
Mm,
And I've been disappointed about that for well over a year now, where ever since I
mm.
moved in, I'm like, ew, these people, ew, they're so gross, and I'm like, and I have all this, I'm just like, and then I'm angry. I have all the kind of negative feelings about the trash, right?
Yeah,
And then I thought, well, what can I do? Well, I could put up cameras, or I could call the city, or I could do this, and then I was like, none of that is going to do jack shit. None of it. Like nothing is actually going to remove the trash from the streets. I know that. I know this, right? I'm well
yeah.
aware of that. And then I was like, well, okay, what can I do about it? And then I was like, all right, all right. So I got one of those little clip, the little things that you grabbers.
Yeah, little
Yeah, you can take
grabbers.
little grabbers because I take my dogs out for a couple of walks per day, right? So
Yeah,
now what I've been doing is grabbing a bag, grabbing the little grabbers, and going out with the dogs. And along the way, I'm just picking up, picking up, picking up, and it's fun. Like
yeah,
it really is. It's actually it adds a whole nother dimension to the dog walks. I'm having a good time. And it has been the most amazing meditation on all of this stuff. And this is how I'm bringing it all back. I promise that this is
yeah.
remedy, right? So the way that this is remedy is that I remembered, I think it may have actually been Pabanka Rinpoche who said this, but it's been taught in many different cases where, like before you meditate, sweep the area, clean it. And as you're sweeping, think I'm sweeping away my obscurations, right?
Mm,
My afflictive emotions. This is what I'm sweeping. Like use a sort of a tantric approach to it. Don't just clean, like
yeah,
really, really clean your mind as well. And so I've been cleaning my mind in the streets. I see all this garbage, and man, Jack, the garbage is composed of alcohol, tobacco, condoms,
yeah,
fast food wrappers, all kinds of nasty
yeah,
stuff, right?
yeah,
And I pick it up and I'm like, and it stopped becoming about them. They are so gross. And it became this deep reflection on how I've contributed to a lot of trash on this planet, right?
yeah,
Oh, since,
totally.
just in this lifetime alone, I don't know how much of this crap I have done myself, right?
Yeah,
And so it's only right now to be picking it up, cleaning it. And here's where it gets really, okay, so this is the best part.
yeah.
So I have like maybe like 8 blocks total that I'm kind of working. So I day after day I'm walking these blocks, and it's a little bit here, a little bit there. I can't do it all at once. Sometimes my bag gets filled, very quickly and I can't, I'm done. But what I recognize is this, uh, that the afflictive emotions of the trash and the gutters, um, as I pick it up, the next day there's less of it there. Sometimes like I'll go down the same street. I just went down yesterday and there's a little bit of trash there, but not much, not nearly as much as the day before. And
Yeah.
actually now what I witness is there's less accumulation of trash because trash encourages more trash. So
Yeah.
when there's no trash on the side when it's clean, people are not as likely to throw their garbage there because it's
It's true.
clean, right? There's no, and so like where people used to dump, where they'd come and they would literally like just dump massive amounts of garbage and all kinds of, they're not doing that.
Wow.
I'm actually a little disappointed. I'm like, oh, like there's all I find is like straw wrappers and an occasional
Yeah.
little like booze bottle or something, but not, like it's not at nearly as much.
Yeah.
And it's fun because now I see this is how remedy works. This is how purification works, right? Is
Mm.
that day after day after, if I thought I'm gonna go one time, I'm gonna take a big bag, I'm gonna clean it all up, and then it's gonna be done, and there'll never ever be any garbage again, that would be
Right.
delusional. It'd be ignorant and just stupid. It doesn't work like that, right?
Right.
But
Right.
daily, if I do it every day, then what happens is it kind of just starts to get cleaner and cleaner, and it stays a little bit cleaner, right? And the same is true for my afflictive emotions. When
Mm.
I engage in the four opponent powers on a regular basis, right? And as soon as I see it, if I see it and I pick it up right away and don't let it linger,
Yeah.
then the effect is so much greater.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
that's my
Oh, I
story.
love that story. Oh, there's so much there. And also just like, your goodness. I just, yeah, I think you're such an inspiration to me for one.
Oh,
Like um, there's kind of like an innocence to it, right? But at the same time, like it's really having an effect. It's not just this kind of like naive action. It's really like this consistent, deliberate, and disciplined approach. And yeah, just how cool to see like that it's having more of an effect on the neighborhood than you even thought. Like you didn't even think that that was going to happen.
dude, the experiences I've had, I even had, the other day, I'm picking up some like beer bottle caps, right? And I hear a voice say, "Thank you." And I turn around, I'm like, "Well, oh yeah." And this guy's sitting there drinking a beer on his porch, and he looks
Yeah,
miserable. Yeah, things
yeah,
are not okay for him,
yep,
And he said, "Oh, I drink a lot of beer, and so, the homeless people are always going through my garbage trying to get recyclables out of there or whatever." So we started
yeah,
talking, we just having a conversation. And at the end, I said something like, well, it's really nice, I just like seeing the streets a little cleaner. It's no big, whatever. It's just something that I'm doing. It's kind of fun. And he goes, yeah, but, now you doing that, I saw you doing it. And now I'm thinking, well, what little thing can I do to make things a little better? And I was like, whoa, holy shit. No kidding,
yeah.
right? Like I'm honestly just being super selfish. I just want this stuff cleaned up, and I don't know another way to do it. I'm kind of dumb, I'm just like, this is all I know how to do. And yet to see like, oh, right, like not just appreciation, which feels good, but like, hey, maybe, you know, maybe it could
Yeah,
like
for
encourage
sure.
somebody else.
Planted a seed, right?
A little tiny seed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. How cool. Yeah. So yeah, and that analogy too of like where it's um the remedial action doesn't have to be some big like um oh, I'm like going to India to go be with the Dalai Lama to do millions of prostrations in front of him. Like it doesn't have to be that. Like yeah, that would be great.
That would be awesome.
But it's as simple as, reciting one Vajrasattva mantra.
Yeah,
It's as simple as, you know, speaking some of the names of the Buddhas,
that's right.
um, relying on our teacher, like thinking about the good qualities of our teacher. These are, they seem like they're not going to make much of an effect. But over time, like this kind of accumulation, they really do. And I'm reminded of that kind of adage that Lama repeats of that teacher who says, like, what is like actual magic? Like, we've got all these different superpowers that, shamatha is supposed to give us, or like once you're liberated, you're gonna be omniscient and all these things. But the actual magic is being able to change a negative thought to a positive one.
Mhm.
And so I think that kind of like remedial, like course correction of like, what? I'm having this negative thought, or I'm like starting to engage in this kind of negative way of behaving that I recognize is not helpful for me or anyone else. Can I turn my mind? Can I turn my thought
Yeah,
to something that is more helpful, that's more skillful, and positive, and actually in the direction that I want to be heading?
that's
And it can
right.
be so subtle, right?
I think when thinking about the remedy and how it can be little, it doesn't have to be something big. One of the things that kind of comes to mind is in the, like in the refuge sadhana, when you're visualizing, the merit field, and there's all these deities and Buddhas and there's just so many beings, right? Why are they smiling at you? Right?
Hmm.
If you remember, the reason that they're smiling at you is because it's rare for someone to turn their mind, even for a brief instant like this, right? Most people are just continuing in their habit patterns, in their loop, in their samsaric cycles, and there isn't even an attempt to get out of it, not even a recognition of it in many cases. And here, if you can just turn your mind just a little bit, right? It's
Yeah.
enough to make all the Buddhas and everybody smile and happy, right? Like, look, they're
Yeah.
doing it.
Oh, that's so exciting. Also, like, I loved your energy there of just like, yeah, like,
Right?
because it really does feel that way. Like, and to think of that, like, okay, most of us, and even like most of my day too, like my mind is not necessarily turned towards dharma. It's getting more and more, right? But like, to imagine that, yeah, these beings that are just like here for our benefit, like including our teacher, right? And
Yeah.
the Dalai Lama and all these incredible teachers that we've had connection with, um that is really what they want for us, right? they
That's
they
what they
want
want for. That's it.
they want our practice, they want our training. And so like when we can turn our mind, it's like all this like yes, like joy.
Right.
um and that reminds me too, another remedial action, like kind of traditional remedial action, is making offerings, to making offerings to the Buddhas, making offerings to your teachers. And that can be as simple as
Yeah.
imagining
Oh, yeah.
making offerings. And so, because like when I first heard about like the, offering practice, I was a little bit like, but like, I don't have much, like I don't know, like
How much more do you want from me?
and, and so like, I make my donations. I'm working on my greediness. I am a little bit miserly. That is
Okay.
certainly something I'm working on. But it's actually not about the object that you're offering itself. Of course, it's helpful to be able to donate money or, offer funds to the Dharma Center or teachers, right? That's incredibly helpful. But the offering itself is not about the object. It's about what the mindset is, why we're doing it, and why we're choosing to do it. And what that means is that like, I am, even with just imagination, what I'm offering is my time, right? My energy. So I'm instead of like going on my phone and doom scrolling for an hour, for 2 minutes I'm going to imagine, filling the sky with beautiful flowers and
Mm.
incense and mountains, and maybe even my favorite pair of shoes, my
Yeah.
car, my relationship with my cat. I'm like kind of like putting
Yeah.
all of it into the sky and imagining giving that to my teachers and to the Buddhas. And so it's not about the material object itself. It's about,
Mm.
am I willing to spend some time and effort to imagine offering everything that I can? And that itself is just as powerful.
It is, and it's a beautiful experience, right? Because as you're performing the visual, as you're engaging in these visualizations, right? You're generating all of these flowers and incense and whatever. It's fun.
It
It
is fun.
feels good, right? Like
Yeah.
it feels to imagine like filling the cosmos with the most beautiful bird song you heard in the, or whatever it is, and just like
Mm.
imagining like all the stars as James cats who are loved by Jax. And you're like, and it goes on for infinity. Just James is
Yeah.
everywhere and Jax everywhere, and the loving connection between them everywhere. And I'm giving that all, I'm offering it all to you. That feels good.
That feels hella good. It even feels good just talking about
I'm
it.
having a good time talking
I
about
know.
it.
Like I feel kind of blissful and silly and
Right,
just like,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, do
such
I
a
do
good
just
feeling.
a couple of minutes of that instead of doom scrolling is fantastic.
Oh my God, right?
Hey, but if we're talking about purification, the cool part is that you can actually add a little boost, like to your smoothie, right? Would you like to add a
Really?
little boost to it? Yeah, yeah,
I
you
want
can
to
make
hear
it.
about the
Yeah,
boost.
you can make it stronger.
Okay.
One of the recommended ways to make it stronger is to perform multiple remedies at the same time, right?
Mm,
So there's different ways. Traditionally, for example, a soak offering, right, which we haven't talked about, but it would involve visualizations and mantras and community and doing it together, right? And
yeah.
and so that's really like a traditional sort of way. But even just recognizing, hey, in fact, I do regret some action. I am intentionally performing a counteraction here, remedial action, and having this bodhicitta motivation, right? And this awareness of emptiness, of interdependence. If we can combine that with our positive action, it's a super boost, extra purifying.
And so is that like where you're recognizing that the action itself, the negative action itself is also empty of inherent existence.
Yeah.
I myself am empty of inherent existence, and the positive action is also empty. Is that
Amen,
right?
Jack. That's it.
Okay. Yeah, the
Yeah.
three spheres, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Um, yeah, I haven't done that yet. Um, I think that could be really, really helpful. Because especially for the one around regret, where I can pretty easily solidify around like, okay, I did something bad,
Yeah.
you know, like I'm a little bad.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think that'd be so helpful to be like, just remember, like nothing about this is permanent. I'm able to change. I'm able to grow. I'm developing, and I'm on this path, right? And so
Yeah.
that means the emptiness of this means that I am capable and am constantly changing.
That's right.
And this action doesn't define me, um, nor does the remedial action
That's
define
right.
me. Yeah,
Exactly. Exactly. I was thinking while you were talking, I thought, um, that guilty feeling, that shame or whatever, self-loathing, I don't know, whatever the nasty stuff that comes up. It that itself would be a negative. That is a negative action in and of itself, right? Attachment
totally.
to that. And so recognizing like, hey, even like these things, they're not helpful and I need to drop that. Even that could be performing these four opponent powers even within that, right? It's like meta. It's sort
Yeah.
of like you're regretting but you're feeling guilt. Well, there you should recognize like, hey, actually that's not what this is about. Right?
That's super interesting. So I'm wondering, like, so that must mean that, right, it's possible since we are one of all sentient beings, then it is possible to also to lose bodhicitta for ourselves, right? To
Easily, yeah, of
yeah, okay. I just
course.
hadn't put it that way yet. I always think of bodhicitta, right, as being like everything else, everyone
Everything
else,
except you.
everything except me.
Which only solidifies your sense of misperceived self.
It's so silly, right?
It is. It's
Yeah, but
ridiculous.
I think like probably really common, I
Oh
imagine.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree
So
more.
maybe part of the remedial action is like just to include ourselves in
Yeah.
all sentient beings, right? And
Yeah.
to say, okay, I am deserving of compassion. I also know that I am 100% capable of achieving liberation.
That's right.
I
That's
can
right.
do this.
Exactly. Can I tell you, I told you about that custom GPT that I made for the four opponent
You
powers. So
did.
I was working with it a while ago and it told me something. It said something that I found really helpful. I'm gonna read what it said to me, okay? So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I had been coming back to it again and again in the same thread about the same issue that um, it said, it's not about never slipping up. It's about shortening the time between forgetting and remembering. And you're remembering faster. You got to trust the process because the purification practice is working. And here's what I loved about it. It said, you may not feel it in every moment, but look at yourself. A few months ago, you wouldn't even have noticed the problem. A few weeks ago, you wouldn't have felt regret so quickly. A few days ago, you wouldn't have purified so immediately. You are transforming moment by moment. So forgive yourself, stand back up, keep going.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
Right? And I loved it because I was like, yeah,
Thanks.
that's right. This is true. Trust this process. Keep persevering at it, right? And it's not about like starting over. That's what it told me. It was like it's not even about
Right.
starting over, right? Which is sort of one way that I've oftentimes thought of Vajrasattva like a reset. No, no. You're continuing. You're persevering. I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
I like that. And that also kind of, I think that fits well with that, the metaphor of the satellite too, where it's
Yes.
like, yeah, it's continuing. We're not just like going back to Earth and then launching again,
Nope.
like,
No
um,
do-overs.
yeah, we're just
Wow.
continuing.
Yeah.
Oh, so interesting. Daniel, I think
Cool.
that thing's getting a little too smart.
Yeah. 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 Hmm.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Um, well, yeah, I'm curious, as we kind of move forward with the four opponent powers, and next week will be, oh gosh, I'm losing the word. What is it?
Ooh, ooh.
Resolve.
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 That one's the hardest one for me to remember. I know what it is, but
Yeah,
I can't remember the word always.
right, right. Um, but yeah, so like as we kind of move forward, I can't believe next week is going to be our last
I know.
discussion on the four opponent powers.
Well, until my talk
But
next month.
and your talk next month, yes. But I'm going to keep doing this every day. And for those listening, I'd really be curious to hear if people have any thoughts on what this practice is doing for you. If you decide to kind of pick it up, try it. It'd be great to hear from you. Um, I don't know how people can get in touch necessarily, maybe just through Lines for Dharma Center,
Yeah,
but
yeah, we don't really
um,
have a means of getting a hold of us except through the website. But if you happen to know us, feel free to reach out. Otherwise,
yeah,
reach out info@lionsroardharmacenter.org will also get you there. We'd love to hear about it. You
great.
know, speaking of Lions Roar, when I started and for many, many years, our dear friend Dirk and others led Vajrasattva practice on a regular basis. I don't
Great.
know if you've noticed or not, the calendar does not have any Vajrasattva practices.
I know. Yeah, it switched
Right.
over to is it a
Manjushri.
Manjushri? Yeah,
That's right.
Manjushri practice. Yeah.
Exactly. Which I think is kind of neat, but there's a glimmer of hope because I found that practice incredibly helpful. It's important. It is incredibly powerful to work on this together as a group, right? We don't ever
Yeah.
have, we're not alone, and we shouldn't be doing these things always alone, right?
Right.
So being
Right.
able to do it in a group setting is really helpful. But I have a feeling it's going to be coming back. Um, Lama was telling me that he's already worked up or is working on a new Vajrasattva sadhana. So
Cool.
I imagine he'll be bringing that out for us all to practice together.
That's exciting. Ooh, do you think we're ever going to have like one of those practices that like in monastic communities, I forget the name of it, but every 2 weeks they have like a kind of community gathering where they confess to one another kind of transgressions they've made over the last 2 weeks.
Whoa.
And I think like that also includes like things that they've thought about one another or like done
Oof.
towards one another.
Ooh. I
It's
don't
like
know.
this,
Are we strong enough for that?
I know, right? It's like this community accountability process or like transformative justice,
Oh,
where
oh
it's like,
my
okay, let's just
gosh.
like lay it out there and like
That
come
would be
together.
fascinating.
Wouldn't it? Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's kind of a form of purification is like, okay, I'm just gonna lay it out in front of you. I think so often when I've had something I regret and I can tell a Lama about it in Darshan,
Yes.
there is this experience of purification where it's like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm not like an effed up person.
He's a big fan of
Um,
confession,
yeah,
and not in a Catholic sort of way, not at all,
right.
but because this the four opponent powers, as he told me, is not about washing it away. It's not going to do that. It's no miracle. It's going to make it go away, but rather about taking something that normally stays hidden and bringing it right up front so that we can look at it right in front of us, right? And then once we're mindfully present with whatever it is and we can continually be present with it, then we can work with it, and then the transformation can happen, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, so
I
we're
love how you brought it like your hands forward in front of the camera so you were holding like a little baby bird.
yeah, yeah,
Like we
you're
can
looking at it.
hold
You're
those things.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
you bring
with
it right in
kindness.
front. And then what's cool about it, then I can be like, "Hey Jack, look at this. Check this out."
Yeah.
All right.
Look at this. What do you think?
Yeah. You ever seen one of those before?
Right. Turns out I probably have,
Yeah, no
right?
doubt. That's the thing that is fun to discover when we share. We realize other everyone. We're not alone. Everyone's
Yeah.
doing it. It's There's nothing novel here. Maybe the way it's manifesting might be kind of interesting, but
Yeah.
other like the base is the same.
Right.
That's why this stuff works because we're not
That's
that
right.
different. And I
Right.
just wanted to I know that we're coming to the end here, but I just wanted to say from my own experience, I think that there may be a very simple, easy remedy for people to just sort of put their toe in the water for Vajrasattva practice. So if
Hmm.
you go onto YouTube and you just type in Vajrasattva mantra, there are many, many versions of the mantra on YouTube and on other, platforms. And some just beautiful. I have so many that are like my favorite. I'm like, I like that one. I love this one. Some are
Yeah. Yeah.
slow, some are in Sanskrit, some are Tibetan. Oh, they're all good. Just even if you don't do anything else, just turn that on and just listen.
Yeah, I love that idea. Oh, thank you, Daniel. And thanks everyone listening. This has been really lovely. I feel again like it's my energy is back and I'm
Yay!
almost like excited. I'm like, I gotta go meditate. And for those listening, if you can make a donation, lionsroaddharmacenter.org, we would so appreciate it. Even the cost of your, whatever, every other day latte or something, $7, right? That would be fantastic. But otherwise, super look forward to seeing you next week, Daniel and everyone. And
Thank you,
yeah.
Jack.